The World Economic Forum predicts 80 million jobs replaced within the next year.
We are using AI to totally circumvent that process, and we have files underwritten literally in minutes now.
Law firms will either adopt and survive, or they won't, and they'll die.
We can't lose sight of the importance of teaching our kids these skills.
A year and a half ago, I had that same problem that most business owners have, and I lost a key employee, and I did what most business owners do, and I freaked out. Terrified, freaked out, didn't know what to do. So I did the second thing that most business owners do, and I started picking up the slack, doing the work, putting in the extra hours, and I became immediately overwhelmed, much to my wife's chagrin. But then something happened. I started looking for solutions, and I started using AI in my workflows, and I saved 90% of my time within a couple days. And I was hooked. I see it. I see the nods. Unbelievable. I was hooked. So I became hungry. I started reading blogs, watching videos, testing the new tools, which about 2,000 new tools come out every week, which is kind of crazy. Anyway, so I started using all these tools. I started training my staff, my team, and about 3 months later, I quit my day job and I went all in, growing my business. This is the power of AI, people, and it's here. It's accessible to everybody, and today I'm really excited to talk to this panel and get some insights into how it's changing industries from the medical, the legal, the education, and the mortgage industry. This is going to be sick. This is going to be great. Take pictures, tag everyone on social media, and let's get into it. What do you say? All right. Woo. I'm telling you. So let me start over here on the right with Mr. Steve Travers from our Chief Information Officer at Broward Health. We had a nice conversation beforehand. Steve, how close am I to having an AI doctor?
Yeah, we're getting very close. So AI's been around in healthcare for some time. Your radiologist has been using an AI doctor to a point in many of the x-rays and images that they review. It helps them identify key areas that they need to spend a bit of extra attention with. It'll even tell them possibly what's wrong with it. So AI has been there quite a bit, and it is just growing in healthcare.
Yeah, I've found that doctors in general are very analytical, but not always the most soft-spoken, can we say? How can AI help alleviate negative messaging from doctors delivering really, really tough messages to patients?
Yeah, that's a good one. So with AI, we're using it for physician notes. It's embedded in a lot of the electronic medical record systems now. So the most popular one right now is called Epic. And inside of it, it starts a note or a message for a physician to a patient or as part of their documentation. And it will look at the tone of the note and will make recommendations about how they could be more empathetic and really take that into consideration. Because you have some doctors that are very, strong people type of folks, and then you have other ones that are there because of their strong analytical skills, and they may not have the best manners when it comes to replying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I find the human body to be like pretty complex, pretty complex, like a little bit. And that's one of the things that AI is really, really good at doing, right? It's incredibly powerful at taking in massive amounts of data and finding correlations that my puny, scrawny human mind might not be able to put together. How is AI going to help create better diagnoses and give better results for patients?
So as you know, in the medical field, we do have errors that occur very often. It's just you miss something that's in the chart, or there's a history that you may not have been able to look at. It's very event-based. There's a lot of time that you have to spend on things, and you may not have that time. So AI really helps with getting all the information to the clinical provider in one spot so that they can make the best decision possible. So it helps with, simple things like drug-drug interactions. That was a rule set, but now it's becoming much smarter. You have things like precision medicine where they craft the drugs specifically for you. So it's getting a bit more difficult to have just a rules engine do it. You've got to have something that's got some intelligence built into it. But diagnoses, that's a fairly common one. It looks at the notes that the physician has. It looks at your labs. It'll take care of that and help them with suggesting here's what they are. And oftentimes when they do their documentation, they have to be very specific about an item. So it's not just an injury on your arm. It's an injury on the right arm, on the lower half, and it was in the kitchen. So it's a fair amount of data that they have to keep up with that gets reported out to the government, and it's part of our whole population health, where they're taking a look at where do accidents occur, what certain ailments that people have that cause problems that we could do something about. So all that's there in this huge database that we're trying to build in healthcare so that we can provide better care for folks and see trends before they actually happen.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I want to shift over here to the one and only Michal Kefford, principal from our very own Majory Stoneman Douglas. Like, what are we ranked in the USA now? Pretty high, top rated.
One of the top schools.
Top
U.S.
school.
World Reports and across the nation.
Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, let's give a big hand for Stoneman Douglas. Let's go. Let's go. Everybody wants to be there. That's what I hear. Everybody wants to be there. Michal, so AI is going to be a pretty big deal, I've heard, right? The World Economic Forum predicts 80 million jobs replaced within the next year. I mean, there's predictions that 30% of the global workforce replaced by 2030 by AI. Pretty big deal. So how are we teaching students to adopt this stuff? We're just going to let AI write all our students' research papers? Is that what we're going to do?
No, we are not. So part of the issue in education and part of the concern, AI is a great tool, but we also want to ensure that we're teaching our students the importance of authenticity and the importance of learning the skills themselves. We all grew up, well, most of us grew up not knowing what a cell phone is. Our kids today don't know a world without cell phones, without a computer device in their hands and information at their fingertips 24/7. So it's important for us as we're adapting to these AI tools, making sure that we are ensuring our students are not reliant solely on the tools, but are learning the skills themselves so that if heaven forbid, the system goes down, we can still function. I'll tell you, I was yesterday trying to call my doctor's office and their system was down. They couldn't do anything, right? So we're so reliant on technology. It's a great thing, but we also have to be able to function in the event those technological tools are not available.
Love that. So are teachers actually encouraging students to use programs like ChatGPT in the classroom at all? Or is it like, stay away, don't use it? Or is it kind of like, use it for everything? I was speaking to a USC professor, Sid Mohasib, on my show a couple months ago. He's like, the first thing I tell students when they come in is ChatGPT is mandatory. Wow. ChatGPT is mandatory, which I thought was interesting because I thought that all the teachers are trying to avoid AI. So I'm just kind of wondering, where's that balance? Are we encouraging our students to use AI and in what capacity?
So we currently are not encouraging our students to use it. Things like ChatGPT and those types of tools will actually generate a report, a paper for you. We need to ensure, like I said before, that our kids have the inherent skills to do it on their own, to be able to craft a paper, to be able to craft an essay, to be able to utilize those skills that are important across life. Yes, we're continually evolving technologically. We're continuing to develop new tools and resources. However, the skills, we can't lose sight of the importance of teaching our kids these skills. I'm always amazed. We teach our kids, let's use math, for example. All you have to do is plug in your phone, in your calculator. Calculator, nobody uses a calculator anymore. I apologize, unless it's on your phone. But plug into your phone how much something is. If you go to Macy's and something's 30% off, we need to teach kids to be able to calculate that in their heads, right? So again, the tools are great, but they need to be used with care and with caution. I think often of Jurassic Park, again, dating myself, but in the movie Jurassic Park, the first one, not all the sequels, there is a quote that's stated in there. We spent so much time thinking about, could we do this? We didn't stop to think, should we do this, right? So I think ethics needs to be a part of the conversation, and using these tools with responsibility also needs to be part of the conversation. Because you're right, there are amazing tools that make everybody's life a little bit easier. However, we are doing a disservice to children if we don't educate them in how to do it themselves.
All right. Woo! So I know that all kids learn the same way. I got 2 kids. They don't.
Mine either.
Every kid learns differently. And that, I think, is one of the challenges with the modern day educational system is we sit kids in a classroom for 8 hours a day. They're looking at a whiteboard. They're writing. How can AI be involved to customize the educational process for students?
So there are a lot of incredible tools. Back in when I went to school, I'm aging myself. I mean, it was only 5 years ago. Just kidding. We did. I have a degree in science, biology, and chemistry, and that's what I taught. I taught biology when I was a teacher, and we used to go in dissections, for example, get the frogs and do the dissections. Now you have the ability to do that virtually. Right? There are so many things we can do virtually, up to and including visiting places. I sat through a seminar a few years ago wherein they have this amazing technology. You can utilize your cell phone and program it, and you can take kids to faraway places, and it's 3-dimensional. You feel like you're in that space. So I think there are a lot of incredible tools. And to your point, kids don't learn the same. Some kids are visual learners. Some kids are auditory learners. Some kids are kinesthetic learners. So you have to really be able to utilize those tools that are available, and there are a plethora, to ensure that we're hitting all those learning modalities to make sure our kids are getting the concepts and it's clicking.
Love that. I have one more question for you, Michelle. I've got a 4-year-old son. And one of these trends that's popping up, I don't know if y'all are seeing this on Instagram, on TikTok, are AI influencers. Are y'all seeing this? Are y'all seeing these AI influencers, these AI generated, typically they're female girls, they're perfect 10 out of 10s, they look however you like. And guess what? For only $1 per text, you can actually have a relationship with this AI influencer. Is this like the death of high school dating? Are AI influencers the death of hhi school dating?
I don't think any of my children at school are dating an AI person, although I don't know. I can't say for sure. But I think all of these things, there are many great tools, but all of these things, are constantly changing. And we had a conversation, and I know I'm gonna call on Jordan for a second about really the validity of things. Even now the new phone, I think it's the Google phone, you can change the face or the head if you're looking in the other direction or you have a funny expression on your face. So what's real and what's not, right? You think about all of these different things, that people can modify. So how are we dealing with that? How are we ensuring, again, I go back to authenticity. How are we ensuring the authenticity of things when everything is subject to modification? And the tools are there. So I think we're going to see a lot of changes. And I think when your kids get to Stoneman Douglas or get to high school age, things will be way different than they are now. And again, how do we combat that? I think that's part of the conversation too, right? Like we have all these great tools. How do we use it? How do we utilize them? But how do we ensure that we're being responsible and ensuring that there's nothing nefarious going on?
It's a wild, wild world. Holy moly. I'm glad
that it is.
I'm glad I've been married for almost 10 years now because it's getting complicated.
If you weren't, you could have an AI girlfriend.
That's true. Bold prediction. Within 5 years, half of your students are going to have AI girlfriends. No doubt. Within 5 years. You can fact check this, YouTube. I know y'all are watching. You can fact check me.
Well, a lot of them have the avatars and the online games and things like that. I do know
sure.
that.
Sure. That's right. Her, Joaquin Phoenix. Great. Everyone give it up for Michelle here. Let's give it up, Michelle. Woo, woo, woo. Great stuff. I want to move over here to Mr. Michael Bander from Cross Country Mortgage, who's actually using AI. I'm going to give Michael a little bit of room to breathe here. Michael, how are you using AI to deliver mortgages at better rates, give customers a better experience? Because I know when I apply for mortgage, it's a pain. I got to get all these documents together. I got to wait. I got to cross my fingers, hope I get approved. How is AI expediting the mortgage process?
So normally when you write a contract, you have a financing contingency period. If you really want to be aggressive in times past, you would have a 2-week financing contingency period, which would be very, very good. We are using AI to totally circumvent that process, and we have files underwritten literally in minutes now. So when a client does an application, they upload their docs. My AI platform reads pay stubs, reads W-2s, reads tax returns, reads credit reports. It will read the automated underwriting system that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac allow lenders to use. And it even takes it a step further, which it reps and warrants our file, which essentially issues us as a lender an insurance policy. So if anything in that file is missed, we're not held liable. And so it allows our realtor partners, builders, or anyone that we're working with the ability to write contracts in a much more aggressive, advantageous way for their client.
I'm a little bit at a loss for words here. Did you say that the mortgage underwriting process just went from 2 weeks to 2 minutes?
Our best time is 13 minutes.
13 minutes. Are y'all hearing this? From 2 weeks to 13 minutes, holy cow. That leads me to believe that there were more people involved before, right? So is this like the death of the individual mortgage broker? Are they just all gonna be irrelevant? Because why am I gonna hire someone and pay them whatever, $50 an hour plus benefits if I can have a robot do it in 13 minutes? Why would I do that?
So there's still a human element to it. Our human underwriters are still fully employed. They still review non-borrower oriented documents, appraisal, title, verifications, things of that nature, tax transcripts if they're needed. So there still are certain elements to it, but we use it not to replace, but more as an accompaniment to the human element that we have that we're using on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So it's basically, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by a human that's using AI, is basically what I'm hearing you saying, right?
You better get on board to use AI or learn it, because it's affecting every industry. It's definitely changing the game on ours.
Crazy. Are there any compliance issues that you run into? I mean, there was a story of this attorney in New York, which we're going to get over to Mr. Jordan here in a moment, but who was just using AI to write case law and stuff like that. I don't want to get too off topic here, but are there any compliance issues that you run into using AI in the mortgage industry? Is someone going to say like, you discriminated against me because you're using this robot and it's not giving me a fair shake? Is that something that's coming up?
No, because, again, it's calculating your income based on your pay stubs. It really doesn't know whether you're male, female, color, gender, anything like that. It's basing its decision on strictly the data. So it's calculating your income based on the data, the docs that the borrower is providing. It's basing its decision based on the application that the borrower is completing.
Powerful stuff. If y'all walk away from here with one thing, I think it's that you're going from 2 weeks to 13 minutes for the underwriting process. That is like mind blowing.
The rep and warrant piece is the biggest thing, because it really, and to your point on the compliance side, if you didn't have that, there could be some things that lenders, if they did implement it, would be in the line of fire. But because it has that rep and warrant, it really helps the lender have confidence in being able to use the system in addition to the human element that they're given.
Great stuff. Michael, thank you very much. Give it a hand for Michael, y'all. Give Michael a hand for scaring the crap out of all of us. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Let's move over here to Mr. Jordan Isrow here. Vice Mayor Jordan Isrow. Welcome to the stage. Also an attorney. So Jordan, I have a question here. We talked about how efficient AI is, how it can be compliant, all this good stuff. When can I just have AI write up all my contracts for me?
The answer is not yet, right? And I think it's a good culmination of everyone who's spoken. I think it's a very robust conversation. And the reason I think it's fascinating to do law last is because they implicate every single other area we've talked about. You're talking about the data gathering in the medical side. You have HIPAA compliance. You have all the actual regulatory risk and concerns of whether a computer gets the diagnosis right. You have the educational side of whether you have plagiarism. You have privacy concerns about information that's being used by students. Financial side, you can have reps and warranties and all that at the end of the day, but there's still someone who's responsible for that. The insurance end, someone's going to have to pay for it if something goes wrong. And I think it's important to kind of reframe it also about there's many different versions of artificial intelligence right now. And, when we talk about that they're only able to glean from pay stubs or whatever, it's all depending on what the data is that's being put into it. And now artificial intelligence is at the stage of machine learning. So it's no longer just the data that this computer is analyzing, but the computer itself can learn from the data, create its own additional kind of processes of analysis. So it's a lot of it, when you go back to drafting a contract, the reason lawyers will still have jobs for at least the foreseeable future is because, as you said, there's a human element. Lawyers, by inherent definition, are people who collect data, review it, apply legal acumen to it and judgment, and then execute in a way that has some sort of ability up beyond just kind of pure computer analysis.
But isn't AI so much better at reviewing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of documents, interpreting it, putting it together? I don't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. AI could probably tell me what I had for breakfast in my entire life, plus tell me all the nutritional elements and whatnot. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not like calling up my attorney to say, hey, buddy, what's going on? It's like, my world is ending right now. Please save me. But, I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around, well, people just want to talk to their attorney. But I would rather save 90% and get a contract written right now using lawyer AI. Why would I not want to do that?
You do want to do that. The question is how much confidence are you going to have in that, right? And the difference is I think you will trust the lawyers who know how to use the AI tools to gain efficiency, to be able to do things that usually took them a week and maybe a day. And you want that, but you still also want to have that ability to be able to look someone in the face and make sure that the decisions they're making for you, you can test the validity of it. You can ask questions. They can give you an explanation. And going back to, there's a lot of ethical concerns in law. And you can kind of comprise it as, I think, probably 4 different subcategories. You have the practice of law, you have the business of law, you have the actual judicial and legislative arm of what law governs artificial intelligence, and then also you have law enforcement, right? You talk about things of not being sure whether something's legitimate or not. Just as well as anyone, deep fakes, right? There's the ability now to create a video that makes it look like I just threw someone's dog off a balcony. And the reality is it's going to get harder and harder in law enforcement for people to be able to sit in a courtroom and be able to understand what's real and what's not. So when you talk about why can't I just rely on a machine to do these things, because we still are at such an early stage that when you talk about 2,000 tools coming out a day or whatever the metric was, who's regulating that? There's no overarching regulatory framework in any country yet that's figured it out. And in fact, even if you do it by country, what's stopping China from doing something different than here? And there's so many kind of question marks that all the benefits that are coming with it, amazing benefits, come with equal downside and risk.
Yeah, well said. Another concern I have in the legal industry is it's kind of related to what I had just mentioned, that AI is so good at reading and retaining tons and tons of information, which historically is what paralegals will do. Right, you'll hire a paralegal, they're just going to sit there and read all this stuff. Are we going to have a massive brain drain because attorneys are just not hiring paralegals at the same rate that they were before, which essentially cuts out all these middlemen, all these young paralegals who historically would have been doing the reading of all these documents? Jordan doesn't need to hire them anymore because he's got AI paralegal. Is AI going to be a massive brain drain for the legal system?
I don't know if I'd categorize it as a brain drain, but yes, it'll definitely remove positions just like in any other industry. You're going to have, like you said, paralegals, maybe even junior associates, the people who are doing research, kind of culling through 1,000 pages to find these pieces of data. Those will be gone. And again, it goes back to finding the lawyers who know how to use the tools, not that the tools replace the lawyers. And I think that's, law firms will either adopt and survive or they won't and they'll die, because if I'm going to go to a lawyer, you just said it, I don't want to pay the lawyer for an hour of their time if I can actually only pay for a half hour of their time, recognizing that half of it has already been done by machine.
Fascinating stuff. Look, listen, we've just scraped the tip of the iceberg. I want to open it up to questions because I'm sure y'all have more questions at this time. If you had a question, just come on up, hop on the hot mic, and okay, that works. Yeah, We'll get it over to Cindy here. And again, I think that what's really important here is what Jordan just highlighted. This stuff is changing so fast. You cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. This is not the Terminator. This is not science fiction. This is actually literally happening in schools, in mortgage, in finance, in health, in legal, in media production. It's happening everywhere. And it's coming soon. Walmart, by the way, planning on automating 63% of their stores within 12 months.
I just have an opinion. It's not even a question. Is in a sense using a navigation system in the car to get someone A to B is AI, I guess, to some degree. I don't know. Well, I used to know how to go, like, I just get in the car and go in the old days. I'm older, okay? Now, I will go to the same place and still put it in, not nearby, but I have to do it because I think as great as it is, and there is an emphasis to teach the basics, people don't want to spend time on things. They want instantaneous, like myself. I honestly think, for lack of a better word, it's the dumbing down of this world. And as great as it is, I think it is as bad as it is. So, my opinion.
Great comment. Jordan, you got an idea here?
I agree with that. And I think it also goes back to what Michelle was saying, is that even in law school, by the time I went to school, they had online legal research. And yet, first year, required mandatory, you have to go to a legal library and learn how to go to all the books and find it yourself. And I think as long as education is still being taught in a way that builds the foundation, the reliance, even though I agree with you, our brains are probably evolving by all this as well. But I think more importantly, it goes back to GPS. Right now, you have self-driving car, right? You look at Tesla. One of the biggest concerns that's going on in AI is the ethical considerations. You have, let's say you call it even a war. You're using drones that are trained by something. These robots are going to have to be making decisions that are based on programming. And the example they always give is your self-driving car is going down the street. There's a kid who runs out into the middle of the road chasing a ball. And at the same time, there's a car driving 50 miles an hour towards you. Your car is the one who has to make that decision. Some computer is going to decide whose life is more valuable. Are they going to stay in course and hit the kid at risk of not hurting the car and potentially you? Or are they going to do some alternative? And usually that is a human decision. And obviously you don't always get it right, but the fact that someone else is making a decision is pretty scary.
Hi. So I've been studying AI because I agree that businesses that don't understand it will be left in the dark, in the wind. One of the things I wasn't clear on, because I haven't gone through this piece of the training, is you talked about uploading all your financial information and stuff. There are certain AI systems that can protect your information, right? Because most of them, you put it in, it's out to the world.
Yeah, so our, like I can't speak for every lender, but for our system, we have a system called Account Check that will allow you to connect your bank account. It doesn't give us access to the account, just gives us access to the activity. So you're not actually uploading a physical statement, okay? As far as all the other income docs, everything is encrypted and firewall protected. Obviously, if you have a clever enough hacker and they want to do damage, I mean, the Pentagon was hacked at one point, so people will find a way. But yes, our systems are very, very protected.
So I'm kind of excited and scared at the same time. And as a lawyer, I don't know what the universe of things that AI can do for my practice. What resources are available here in the chamber that can help to educate me on what I can do in my practice and how to get there?
Love that. Love that. And it's happening so fast. I'm going to defer this over to Jordan. I want to hear his opinion. But obviously, there's a lot of resources out there. I actually have a newsletter called AIupdate.ai. And I just pump that out twice a week just with some quick updates on what's happening because it's happening so fast. It's happening so fast. Even Sam Altman was saying the other day, founder of OpenAI, that he expected all the blue-collar jobs would be replaced by AI, but that's not what's happening. It's all the white-collar jobs, all the college-educated jobs. It's all the people making $80,000 a year that are losing their jobs. So crazy. But let's hear with the specifics of the practice of law. How can we find the right tools?
So Andrea, what I'll do is I'll actually make a list and I'll give it to Cindy and Doug of the tools that I've been using. But I mean, usually people start with ChatGPT, right? And the reason for that is because it is such a kind of diverse tool But the perfect example of how I've been using these tools, number one, ChatGPT, you can actually plug in and upload the complaint itself, right? Let's say you have a complaint, your client's been sued, your client's now going to be sit for deposition. You can actually ask ChatGPT, give me 100 potential questions that will be asked of my client. And it's pretty incredible. You see actually the real substance of it. Another app that's really cool is it actually works on both either in-person recording or even on Zoom, which a lot of these trials or hearings are on now. It listens to the actual audio and doesn't just transcribe it like a transcript. It actually will summarize. So if you have a deposition that's 8 hours long, it will actually provide you a summary of the key things that it believes are relevant based off the complaint you've uploaded.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question? Can the chamber like have some kind of seminars on how to do this or get into it?
I think that's a great idea. And we could probably even have
Great idea.
various ones depending on the industry.
I want to actually get Steve on this real quick. Steve, should I be asking ChatGPT or giving ChatGPT industry secrets or potentially very, very private type of sensitive personal information?
The answer is no. You shouldn't do that. If it's public information or it's like a student paper or something like that, it's probably safe. But ChatGPT uses all the information that's uploaded in it to further train the AI, and so all your uploads that you put into it gets added to the overall database and then gets used. And so in healthcare, we don't use anything that's a public type of AI. It's always private. So Amazon, Microsoft, several of them have private versions of it, which don't go out and share your information with other people or anything like that. It's just like computing resources at your local hospital.
Okay, so how do we combat misinformation on AI? Because we did something in my industry where we had a tutorial, let's say, and we saw all of the misinformation that was coming in through AI. And that could be critical to not just my industry, but any industry and any client or potential client.
I'd love to get Michel's how Michel's doing this, because again, as someone who's got a son and a daughter growing up in school, there's going to be, I am so terrified of deep fakes. I do not want my daughter to walk into high school one day and there's a deep fake of her doing horrendous acts and all the kids in class are laughing at her and pointing out all of her, why she's such a terrible person, or I'm not going to use some of the more colorful language that high school students might use. But Michal, what do you think? How can we be a little bit safer with misinformation?
So I think, there are some tools that our teachers are kind of dabbling with, not necessarily with misfactual information, but just ensuring that it's the students who are actually producing the work. One of those things is there is an application where it kind of tracks when students are typing a paper on a platform, and some of our teachers are requiring that so they can see if all of a sudden you have 5 paragraphs that are input into that paper within 5 seconds, right? And you can tell that didn't come from the student typing. So there are those types of things. I know there are software applications, especially our teachers do monitor. So when anything is being conducted online, our teachers do have their screen where they can see what other windows are open. When a child is, let's say, doing an assessment or doing an activity, just to make sure it's that child working on it without any external tools. And I think, I have a son in college, and I think, back to when he wrote his essay, right, which he did do it on his own without the assistance of any AI resources. But there's also that component of the face-to-face interview. A lot of schools now are doing that as well, and kind of moving to that. I have a student I'm working with very closely who is a senior, who she is required to sit with the admissions committee and have an interview, because you can't fake that, right? You can't, hold on, let me get the information from AI and respond to your question, right? So I think you're going to see some of that too moving forward, just to ensure that it's the actual production or the work is actually produced by that individual, in our case, that student. But as far as facts, are the facts correct? When our kids do research projects as well, they have to include the resources where those, where that information rather was obtained. There are plagiarism softwares that are able to be used as well, just to ensure there aren't chunks of content that are derived from a source external to the student.
Yeah, and I'll just point out that tool would be one of those tools for finding AI is called AI or Not, aiornot.com. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a good. So I could give you some tips on how to get around that too, but I'm not going to go that way. Yeah, Jordan, we got a couple, just real quick.
So, Adrian, it's a good question. I think also it goes back to the whole reliance conversation. There still has to be like a level of verification after something's done. Like you can't be 100% reliant on AI because as soon as you do that, and I know it kind of isn't a contradiction of, you want to be efficient and rely on it to make things easier, but if you have to kind of second guess it and do all the work again, it undermines it. But perfect example is going back to the lawyer who tried using AI to write a brief. It ended up quoting or citing to a case that didn't even exist. And they didn't review it. They didn't actually have their own oversight. And they actually ended up having an issue with the bar. So, trust but verify.
I have a comment and an observation. One, I believe that AI is certainly going to help the small firms like myself compete with the larger firms. Two, I think it's going to take away a lot of the employability of paralegals and even young associates. But in answer to your inquiry, what you were talking about, the Daily Business Review just came out with an article that the ABA is resolving the issue with creating some regulations. But more importantly, the 5th District Court of Appeals just came out with a certification requirement now that any brief or pleading filed in the court has to have an additional certification. And I think the certification issue is something that every industry should be concerned about implementing, that the person submitting a document or a pleading or a brief has to certify that they verified every citation or every case or every finding or observation or opinion, because that's something that's regulatory. And last comment, I'm scared of AI, and I think we all are living in a country with rights, but we very rarely consider our responsibilities. And I see AI having a tremendous adverse effect on our society. And I think we need to discuss more about the responsibilities of AI and not so much the benefits. Thank you very much.
I will say that idea of additional certifications, does that job exist right now? Does that market exist right now? Nope. New market right there. $1 million business idea right there. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. And this is our last question.
So we use, in our accounting firm, we use Thomson Reuters software. And there are 35,000 firms who use the software. In our recent conference called the Synergy Conference, they say that 60% of our research, maybe more, will be using AI. Right now, we have help menus that allow us to go to books, and you have to now research on the book. This is going to create an unbelievable tsunami in getting information. So my question is, we have Thomson Reuters, so they support us and they will give us the AI protocols and even install it in our software to help us. Who do you go to for everyone in this room to get started? That's my question.
The question is, how do you get started with AI? Who do you go to?
Who do you go to help? I mean, as a CPA, I wouldn't know how to use AI without help, without somebody helping me. Who did you go to, and who did you start with?
Sure. Why don't we do a quick roundtable, see how everybody else how each industry would recommend getting started here. Why don't we start over here with my main man, Steve?
Thank you. I started with reading books, and so there are a lot of books that you can find that take you into AI, and there are many of them that are not technical, so they have lots of books for managers and executives on how to use AI. And then I think another interesting place that I learned a lot about AI was on YouTube. You go on there, and it's just tons of videos, and you might have to swallow your pride a little bit because there's a 15-year-old kid who's teaching you how to use AI, and they're really on the money.
Yeah, exactly. And he used AI to write the script for the video. I think it's a good question, but it also is somewhat kind of a variable because every industry has a little bit of a different need within the context of what tools may be better suited for others. But I agree, starting kind of on a simple Google search, and you'll end up going down the rabbit hole. But also what's really interesting right now is ChatGPT. They're coming out with the next kind of generation. And what it is they're actually allowing people to create their own GPT. And so they're essentially going to have like a subcategory of you use whatever data and kind of processes you're looking to accomplish and kind of train it yourself. And it can be done in actually normal human language. You don't need to be like a programmer or a coder or whatever. And not only that, what's interesting about it is they're going to create an own store, like an Apple App Store, where people are going to be able to actually post their ChatGPT and sell it and be able to monetize what they've created. So really interesting.
Yeah, it's really, I actually have my own GPT trained. It's the Podcast Consultant AI GPT. Great as a lead magnet, bringing value to new clients and for existing clients. It's trained with dozens of PDFs, tens of thousands of hours of experience from in here just dumped into there. It's really powerful. I think that the best thing to do, and how I started, was Google, YouTube, and then start tasting it, start playing with it. You know, the more regulated your industry, I think the more cautious you need to be. But that's how I started. And all this, you know, this recording is going to be transcribed with AI. It's going to be clipped up using AI video tools. We're going to be using AI graphics. There's just a lot of powerful things you can do, especially in the creative space, when it comes to media, marketing, distribution.
For us in our system, we actually had training within with the engineers that coded it, crafted it, and they taught us exactly how to use it. In addition to that, you know, I think it's the same thing that everyone keeps saying. It's just, you know, kind of how far do you want to take it? There has to be a human element to this. It's not going to be a machine that just takes over your life. It may go in that direction, and people may be able to, use it in that capacity. But I think to maximize efficiency, to be able to, really, raise the bar, there's got to be a human element in any industry. And that goes into how to get started, right? How to get started. There's got to be a human element that you're willing to invest the time, money, to research, read, and know how to adapt it into your industry the same way that all of us did, and the same way that everyone that's using it is. And if you do that, it's my belief, I'm sure Mark's belief, that you can change the game on your industry, that you can be a disruptor in your industry. I feel confident in our industry. We are disrupting how people write contracts. We are disrupting the cadence in how people operate within their business. And if you invest that time, I think that you'll find it's not going to overtake your CPA firm, but it's going to enhance your CPA firm.
So for us, it's a little bit different, right? We have obviously the professionals, the teachers utilizing these tools to help enhance their teaching and the resources and tools that they can utilize in the classroom and outside. I know a lot of our teachers utilize or are reliant on AI with help with writing recommendation letters. Some of our teachers, are asked to write 50 to 100 recommendation letters for universities and colleges, which is obviously a very time-consuming process. But our concerns are focused more toward kind of how do we combat this, the over-reliance on these tools and make sure they're used responsibly. I know that was shared several times in here, making sure that our kids are not submitting an assignment or an artifact that claims to be their own when it in fact is not. So for us, it's about providing workshops to our teachers in responsible utilization, in how do you ensure your students are in fact submitting work that is their own, and those types of things. So we're evolving too as this technology is constantly evolving. So you're going to see a shift and a change continually, in my opinion, in what is offered and how things are offered to our teachers, to our administrators, to ensure that we're up to date with the tools we need to effectively do our jobs.
Great. And I just want to give one more thing here before we close down. What I would recommend is first subscribe to my newsletter, aiupdate.ai. That's a good place to start, aiupdate.ai, hot plug. But sit down with your team and identify what's the stuff that you hate doing. Where are you already using AI? Because spoiler alert, they're already using AI. Spoiler alert. So sit down with them. Try to get clear on all of your workflows in your office, all your standard operating procedures, and then start to look for solutions, because I promise you there's places where AI can be inserted, and then just start practicing, assessing. Yeah, that's probably another 2-hour-long seminar right there. But thanks. Everyone give it up for our panel here. What a panel. Holy cow. Wow. Unreal.